Hey, what's up? In this one, we are talking hubs, airline alliance hubs, and airline hubs, period. We're going to be using the big three legacy carriers for the United States, and I'm going to go over the hubs and some focus cities and why knowing all of the hubs and focus cities, or at least a great many of them, depending on the legacy carrier you use for your domestic flights, may help you with both your domestic and international bookings. But as always, I'll let the co-star be the co-star, and we will get right into it afterwards.
Welcome back to my dad's channel. If you're new here, make sure to click that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to share.
So before we get into the hubs, I need to tell you exactly why this is important. On my channel, I talk about travel. I talk about credit card points and miles travel and how you can use said points and miles to travel. Now, if I'm going to tell you that, I also have to tell you that finding award bookings can be about as difficult as putting lipstick on a cougar in a phone booth. The fact of the matter is that it is not an unknown that finding award availability and sometimes using said points to travel, especially on domestic flights, which you think would be easiest, can actually be kind of difficult. Depending on where you are and where you're flying, it may actually be a bit of a bear and you may end up having to pay cash anyway. But I'm here to tell you, you may not. And the reason being is that if you know your hubs, if you know the places that your preferred airline flies, they tend to have more routes on between those airports, between those hubs and their focus cities, which makes finding award travel and booking it much easier. Now, another thing is when you know your hubs for your legacy carriers, doing a cross booking from an international carrier is much easier. Because at this point now, if you've been watching my channel long enough, you already know that when I want to fly Delta, chances are I'm going to book it through Virgin Atlantic using Virgin Miles because there's no transfer fee, like how there is if you transfer Delta miles from your credit cards, especially from Amex. It's weird how they do that. It's stupid, but whatever. People pay it. That's their business. But the fact is that if I want to use a domestic Delta flight, book it through Virgin, tends to be less expensive, less fees, $5.60. But with that, it's notoriously difficult because a lot of people don't realize that it's much easier to fly hub to hub using your knowledge of said flight hubs. In other words, instead of taking a straight trip, if you position to a hub, in some cases, you can actually jump from place to place and it'll make your life a lot easier. Now, another thing is that when you know where your airline hubs are, chances are they're in cities you tend to lay over in. I know Atlanta is a hub for Delta. I mean, aside from the fact that Delta's plastered everywhere, is the fact that anytime I get on a Delta bird, that's where I'm gonna land, chances are, before I even get to my final destination. Same thing goes with Clinton Airport in Charlotte. Same thing goes for DFW. You know what I mean? These are things that you just gotta notice. These layover cities tend to be operating hubs, especially if they get a ton of air traffic. Normally, I believe it's 100 flights within a month will classify a city as a hub. If not that, a focus city. Now, the difference between a hub and a focus city is a hub is an established place, period. There are normally offices, an administrative arm in that airport to handle that flight traffic, whereas focus cities are cities where you will get a lot of air traffic, but that can change at the drop of a dime. In other words, they are very fluid and focus cities can shift. Now, another thing about knowing your hubs, another great thing is that your airline hubs, your major hubs, are great places to position for international flights because most of the time it's your major airline hubs that run the most international flights to whatever continent that you're going to. So you should know exactly where to position. Don't try to, get a points redemption from your rinky-dink airport, which is going to have to connect through a hub anyway. So all those miles that they're going to fly to get you to the air hub, they're going to inflate the points price. No, you just pay a cash ticket, position to your international hub, and then you can really drive up the cent per point value on your points when you redeem international travel from major hubs. And finally, knowing your hubs is great because once you start learning your domestic hubs, it's easier to connect to international hubs. As an example, Charles de Gaulle Airport. in Paris. It's an international hub for Delta and numerous other airlines. If you've ever been to that airport, it is absolutely huge. Then you have Schiphol in Amsterdam, but I know that it's pronounced Schiphol because Matt Clausen told me it was pronounced Schiphol, and that is a major SkyTeam hub. In other words, not just Delta, but Air France, KLM, Delta, and other SkyTeam partners. You see what I mean? These are the things that you're going to end up knowing, because once you learn your domestics, you're going to want to reach out. And just like there are domestic hubs, there are international ones. And once you know them, you really have the game by the short and curlies. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce these hubs. And these are the places that you may want to take note on. I'll go ahead and display them on screen here. And the first one I'm going to start with is my favorite airline alliance, which is SkyTeam, which has my favorite product, which is Delta. So now Delta being the legacy carrier, we're just going to focus on the US. So with Delta, your number one, your operating hub is going to be Atlanta, no brainer there. But that is a hub as well as your operating center. Another one is going to be Boston. Then you have the airports in New York proper, meaning LaGuardia and JFK. Those two are also Delta hubs. You have Minneapolis, which is MSP. You also have Salt Lake City, and you have Seattle Tacoma. It's commonly referred to as SeaTac, but Seattle Tacoma, that international airport, is also a Delta hub. And last but not least, you have Los Angeles LAX. Now moving on to the One World Alliance, the legacy carrier there is going to be American Airlines. Now American Airlines is actually headquartered out of Dallas, but they fly a ton of flights out of both Dallas-Fort Worth, obviously, and Charlotte Clinton Douglas Airport, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina. They pretty much own that airport. But you have Dallas, you have Charlotte. They also have hubs in both LaGuardia and JFK, which are both in New York. You have Miami, which is a major American hub. You have Chicago, you have Phoenix, you have Philadelphia, which is, a lot of people should know Philadelphia is an American hub. I know I got a lot of people in Philly, so they tend to fly American. In the capital, in Washington, D.C., you have Reagan International. That is an American hub. And you also have Los Angeles LAX as a hub for American Airlines. Now finally, we have the Star Alliance, and their domestic legacy carrier is going to be United. Now their hubs are as follows. You have Denver International Airport, which on a recent list, craziest thing I ever saw, was Atlanta is the most traveled airport in the world, period, the busiest airport in the United States. And number 3 is Denver. I didn't even know that many flights flew out of Denver. And the funny thing was JFK and LaGuardia didn't even make the list, but that is wild. That's how busy of a hub that Denver is. So Denver is a United hub. You also have Chicago. You also have Newark. Newark is a very well-known United hub. San Francisco is also a major United hub. And to round out the list, you have Dulles International Airport, Washington Dulles Airport in DC. And last but not least, well, not last, because you also have Guam International Airport, but I don't know how many people are flying from Guam. But just in case you want to know, Guam International is a United hub, and technically it's American because Guam is a U.S. territory. And finally, you have Los Angeles LAX once again. Now with all of those, and I mean by all means, if you want to go back and you want to pause them and you want to write them down for your next points redemption, this could be very useful to you. Now you know which cities tend to fly the most planes between which cities. And each one of these major metros have other sort of ancillary airports around them that aren't as big, obviously aren't hubs, but you pretty much know that you're within striking distance of your final destination. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but LAX is actually a hub for all 3 of the major legacy carriers. So if you can find a one-way flight, if you're going anywhere in Southern California or the Los Angeles area, you can actually pick up a flight on one legacy carrier to there, maybe get a redemption there, and then from LA, you can actually use another carrier. You know what I mean? Because some of them share, especially the New York to LA routes. So That is a very popular route. So these are the things that you definitely want to think about as far as where your hubs are, but you want to start looking there and branch out, especially if you're trying to do international redemptions and some domestic redemptions. So I hope this has been helpful. I have also explained in detail all 3 of the airline alliances and airlines that are member airlines of said alliances in videos that I will link here. And thank you so much if you stayed all the way to the end of the video. I really enjoyed doing this one, and I hope that you guys get some value out of it. And please leave in the comments what redemptions you're working on. Hopefully you got some good redemptions. Please let me know some data points, and we can chop it up maybe on a live or what have you, because that's just the kind of interaction I like. But other than that, I am not going to hold you with any more aimless babble about airport hubs and or focus cities, and I will catch you later.